system. We've been doing this for, gosh, years and years, and we love being here once a week, once a month. We have several guests that are in the audience that I want to introduce. As I mentioned last month, I'm going to be retiring at the end of the year, and the nurse that is replacing me is Chaley Stenna. She's back in the back there, so welcome, Chaley. And you probably remember Sarah Langston. She's our stroke outreach coordinator, and also going to be taking over the speaker series scheduling. So again, topics that you all want, please let Sarah know, let Jane or Jeanette know. So we'd love to meet all of you and your interests. So today is my very special pleasure to introduce Dr. Sandy Billinger. As you can see, she's a director of the REACH laboratory, of which she developed and created. She's the neurovascular division director for the KU Alzheimer's Center. But most importantly, she is a powerhouse in the world of stroke and helping stroke survivors. She does that in numerous ways, but one way is she walked all the way across the state of Kansas to raise money for research back in 2013. So as a result of that, she will be able to use that work in various ways that she's going to describe today. So we are pleased and honored to have her in our health system and as our presenter today. Welcome, Sandy.
All right, so it is so great to have so many people here today. And this is honestly, I've given numerous talks, but this is my first time doing Facebook Live. So let's have a little fun today, right? All right, so my water here, is that gonna be okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so one of the things that I get to do today is talk about something I'm very passionate about. And again, it's going to be in the second half of the presentation and talking about brain health after stroke. Because I think it's very important that, first of all, we really try to understand what do we do after stroke? What kind of exercise would we do? And how do we do this? So, we are not working. My slide advancer. So while maybe you work on that, I'm going to do this. Can we get this going?
Can you turn up your microphone a little bit?
You need me to turn it up, or maybe I can talk louder?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Or maybe they need to adjust a little bit. So I always have to disclose, especially when I do presentations live, I do receive funding by the National Institutes of Health. And I also want to highlight that some of the work that I'm going to talk about with brain health, I've also filed a patent for with the United States Patent Office. So I just do have to make those disclosures. We good?
Yeah.
All right. So some of you that have attended my talk before will know that this is a saying and the quote of the day that I really want us to think about. If we could take all the benefits that we can get from exercise and smash it together into a pill, that this would be the most prescribed medicine that we could get, and it has the most benefit. Think about how powerful that is. Your doctors would prescribe this exercise pill for you because of the greatest benefits. But that's hard to do because there's so many things every time you move your muscles, whenever you move your arms, your heart rate goes up, right? Your lungs, you breathe faster. Blood flow goes to all your muscles, to your organs, to your brain. All of that is so very important. And so movement is very critical to what we do, and I think that that's so important. So I put this slide up here. This is something that has been published many years ago. And that is when they looked all of the research studies that were available in the literature. They looked at different things, different drugs that stroke patients typically take. And they also looked at exercise studies. And what they found when they had the outcome, and it was a broad outcome of death, that exercise was more effective for treatment after stroke than antiplatelets and anticoagulants. Now, I want to couch that. That does not mean that you don't take them and that you get off of them and just do exercise. What we mean is that exercise is beneficial and has a more beneficial effect, and a lot your medicine. So again, I'm not advocating that you not take your medications, but that exercise is very powerful for that benefit, and exercise should be considered a viable alternative alongside your drug therapy, and that's something important to think about. So there's this push with the American College of Sports Medicine, there's the push with our American Physical Therapy Association, the American Heart Association, that again, exercise is so very important. The hard part is sometimes we don't all know what to do. If you're not a regular exerciser, you know, what do we do? And I think these are a lot of times questions that individuals, not even with stroke, but individuals in general have. And so the idea was that, well, if people had a prescription, and whether that prescription came from the physician, a therapist, or anybody, that if we wrote down something for you to do, that people would be more likely to do it. Because when you get your prescription for medication, you take it to the pharmacist and you get your medication. So if we give you a prescription for exercise, the hope is that people would follow that prescription and do it. So we're constantly trying to find innovative ways to get the message across that exercise is very important. And I think that, you know, I just want to give, compliments to what you guys get to participate in here at the American Stroke Foundation, because you get to do exercise, you get to work with students and people that help you through exercise, and so that's a really great benefit here, and I'm just always so happy when I hear how the program is growing and developing. So the question I always get is, what should I do after stroke? How can I be more physically active? Okay, so I was very fortunate to work with the American Heart Association, the American Stroke Association, and I was asked to lead the rewriting of the physical activity and exercise recommendations for people after stroke. And so I was assigned to be the chair of this working group, and then got to be the lead author. And I pulled individuals from cardiac rehab, physical therapists, occupational therapists, nurses, physicians, everybody together that had a different perspective that could help us build one of the most comprehensive recommendations out there for individuals. So we had people from Australia, Canada, England, all over the world, the US, all on this. And so here's what I'm going to go through and just talk about, because I want you to know that there's evidence behind what I'm saying. That we've looked at the literature, we've put out these recommendations, and we're going to go through those today. So I often like for people to think about the questions about exercise in the same way we think about medication. And that is, you know, how often do we take your exercise medicines? And if you think about it as a pill, it's how often do I take it? Is it daily? Is it once a week? Is it every other day? These are questions. How much of this medication, and this is dosage, like do you take 2 milligrams, 4 milligrams? With exercise, it would be intensity, and we think of that measure in heart rate. We also think about how many times per day. Is it once a day? And again, when we think about exercise, can I exercise in short bouts, like 3 10-minute bouts, or do I have to do it all in 20 minutes? And those are things that we're going to talk about. What type of exercise medicine is appropriate? Can I do resistance training? Those are some things that we'll talk about. Or is aerobic exercise better? And we call this, in the exercise world, the FIT principle. So it's frequency, intensity, time, and type. And that's just what I went through right here. Okay, so from those recommendations that I showed you, guess what? Anybody know? They're the same for people with stroke, all of you sitting here, as the same as older adults and what everybody should get. We just find, when we scour the literature, that exercise is beneficial for stroke. So what we say is, to do activities 3 to 5 days per week that get your heart rate up. Those are recommended. But we also say in there that doing activity every day. So that doesn't mean that 3 times a week you can do 10 or 20 minutes and then sit every other day and every hour after that. The more activity you can do, getting up, standing. So this is, doing this and all sitting here, this is not good for us, right? I'm the only one that gets So, but 3 to 5 days per week is recommendation. Activity on most days per week. This can be household chores. This is what we call reducing our overall sedentary time. And so for people who use wheelchairs, and maybe they can't move, could they stand up? Can they move their legs in place while they're sitting there? There's a lot of ways that we can just break up sitting time, right? We just sometimes have to be creative about that. It's Chiefs season, right? It's football season here in Kansas City, and so you can jump up and, go yay, or, do different things, or during the commercial, stand up, take some steps, maybe get some weights. There's different ways in which we can do that, and that's where it's helpful for you to work with either your physician, a physical therapist, trainers. Again, ask those questions here at the Stroke Foundation. So intensity, and we're going to spend a little time talking about this because, again, there's different ways in which we can prescribe this based on our heart rate. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Sometimes for individuals who may be on different heart medications, such as beta blockers, your heart rate has a harder time getting up higher, and it's because of that medication. But that's okay. We're going to talk about other ways in which you can monitor the intensity. Time. We recommend 20 to 60 minutes of continuous activity. However, there has been research that's shown that you can still benefit from short bouts throughout the day. 3 10-minute sessions, 15 5-minute sessions. However you do it, honestly, anything is better than sitting all day. I promise you, I've done this before. There will be a quiz at the end. If I ask you what's something we can do, I want to hear answers, which is what? Get up and do something. Right. So moving is important. So the how much, or this intensity, this is again the hardest part. But I want to reassure and emphasize, anything that you do is better than sitting, okay? But this requires some type of individualization. So, this gentleman's heart rate response over here is not the same as mine, is not the same as his, is not the same as hers. Everybody's is different. And so how we respond to exercise is always different. And so this is the part that's a little bit more challenging. And when I say monitoring and supervision, it doesn't mean you have to have a trainer or a therapist, but you have to monitor your heart rate. People do that with Fitbits, with watches. There's a lot of apps where you can put your finger on it and take some, the pulse and get your heart rate. So again, there's ways in which we can do it, but you just have to know how hard you're working. In my lab, and some of the studies that we do, we put people on a treadmill or on a recumbent stepper device, and we do a kind of a stress test. But we can measure what we call VO2 peak, which is it measures how well your heart, your lungs, and your muscles are working together. And we can get a measure, and that's your aerobic capacity or your fitness. And so, out in the community, and typically we don't do this, but we do it a lot for studies. You can also use your age-adjusted heart rate max, and we'll talk about that. And then we can monitor exercise intensity in multiple ways, such as heart rate or RPE. Again, we're going to talk about these. So in your heart rate, when you're on a device, whether you're walking in the community, going upstairs, whether you're on a treadmill or on a recumbent stepping device or a cycle, your heart is working hard, it's getting its exercise. And so we can do this in many ways of monitoring. So the easiest to do, and I'm not saying it's always the most appropriate, but the easiest to do is take 220 and you subtract your age. And that is supposed to be your age-predicted heart rate max. That's the maximum target that you should try to reach. But for exercise prescription, we don't necessarily need everybody to go to max, so we can take a percentage of that. And again, I'm not sure how you guys do it here, but if you took your age, let's say you got a number of times, let's say this was 100, you could take that times 0.65 and get a number in which that could be your range. Some people use this prescription for older adults that are 65 and older. Instead of 220, they use 208. And again, this has been studied in the literature and published, and we use this equation for people after stroke. When we look at prescribing exercise, again, we take this max heart rate that we get, and we use this formula. We subtract your heart rate, we take it times 0.65, then we add your resting heart rate back in. And a lot of times we do this with older adults or people who don't exercise regularly because they tend to have a higher heart rate. And if we account for that higher heart rate, that means that we can exercise you just a little bit harder. And again, that's something that we can do. But again, there are differences if you're on medications that affect your heart rate, which means it keeps it lower. So we have to use other methods. So again, this is the rate of perceived exertion. So this tells us how hard you perceive the effort, right? So if you're exercising, you can tell me if it's hard, not hard enough, I need to work harder, I need to work less hard. And I'm going to show you this scale. But when we think about being in this 12 or 13, this is somewhat hard, okay? This is somewhat hard. I feel like I'm doing something, I'm working, it's hard, but I'm not exhausted. And so a lot of times, if you're doing higher intensity, how many people who might do some activity, whether they walk up a hill, walk upstairs, or maybe your trainer makes you work and you're really sweating, you might feel like you're working a lot harder, so maybe that's a 16. And again, that corresponds with these harder work efforts. And so this is what it looks like. Do you guys use the RPE scale here at all? No? No? Okay. So if you see this, or what we can do is ask how hard somebody's working. Sometimes these scales are 1 to 10. The original scale is 6 to 20. So 6 to 7 would be very light. I feel like this is where you're really relaxed or no effort. So maybe it's getting up, and I guess we don't push our TVs on anymore. It shows my age. We use remotes. So it might be getting up and walking to the restroom. Maybe it's getting something out of the refrigerator. Again, so there's not much effort here. Here's where I like to have people, is somewhere in this green zone. Somewhere between 12 and 16, I want you to work hard. I want you to feel like your heart rate's going. I want you to feel like your muscles are doing something. You're going to get tired. You're breathing faster. And a lot of times people say, oh, my heart, I can really feel it, and they get nervous. But it's okay. The heart rate will go up. You will breathe faster. Your muscles are going to feel tired because you're doing something. And that's not unique to after stroke, because I feel tired when I exercise. I feel my heart rate go up. But what we should never have is pain. So we should never have chest pain. We shouldn't be sore for days on end. But again, we're going to feel a little tired doing this. If you're down in this range, and again, if you're supposed to be in the green zone and you're feeling like the exercise is very hard at a 17 or you're at this maximal effort, we typically, again, for people after stroke, for general community advice, we usually say, maybe not this hard. And I'm going to talk about a study that we're doing where we are looking at this, but we typically like everybody in this range. And it's easy to get to, and most people can do this in the community or home. There's also the talk test that I tell people that we can do. And what this is another way for you to monitor your activity. If you don't use a scale, you're not sure about your heart rate, I tell people when you do exercise, if it's light intensity, you should be able to talk to somebody and hold a conversation, but you can also carry a tune, which means you can sing, okay? If you're working moderately hard, it's going to be difficult to sing or hold that tune, but you can carry a conversation. If you can't sing or carry that tune, because I can't sing, but that has nothing to do with exercise. But if you can't sing and you can't carry a conversation because out of breath, you're working too hard. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So that's something you can do when you want to monitor your exercise, and it's a very simple way to do it. So type of exercise, that's always a question that I get. What type of exercise should I do? What's the best for me? Anybody want to take a guess at what that answer might be?
The one you do the most.
The one you do the most. You've been at my talk before. Yes, it's always the one that you're going to do the most of, right? What you like, whether that's walking, it might be standing in place and marching. You may be limited by what's available outside or in the community, but there are things. So these are pictures from my laboratory. So again, some people prefer a cycle, some people prefer the treadmill. We use a lot of the recumbent steppers. They're easy for people to use. So again, those are for aerobic exercise. But we also have strength training equipment. We have weights that we can use for bicep curls, for our shoulders. Again, there's multiple things that we can do. We also have a device where we can use a harness and put people on a treadmill, and it's mostly for safety, and we can do some treadmill exercise. So again, in our lab, we do specific exercise prescription or studies surrounding exercise. And I tell people that, again, even things like walking your dog or being outside. I just got back from vacation, and the best part of my vacation is I was hiking in the mountains. Again, I was just walking, but I was walking all day long and hiking on trails, and so those things were fun. I'm not sure if we have internet, but I have a link to a device here, and I'll see if it'll go. It may or may not. Let's see. I don't know if I may end up messing everything up. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. There we go. So again, it's not showing. It's not coming up. So there's a little GIF feed where it's showing. You guys are going to have to help me. I have totally messed up my top. Yeah. I have just logged it. Okay. Hang on. So again, we don't have to go there. It's okay. But it was a picture of Homer Simpson. He was sitting on a chair, and all he was doing was moving his legs on the treadmill. Again, if that's the way you can move, that's all good. Anything we can do to get those muscles to contract or move are fine. And like I said, walking the dog and being outside and just going for walks, long walks, short walks, going to the mailbox if you can, and walking around your community, walking around the store is fine. The only thing I don't recommend is if you're going to exercise your dog, is do it in this way. It might be fun for the dog, but it's not recommended for the person in the car. If you're going to get your dog exercise, the best thing you can do is walk with them. All right. So there's really been a lot of question in the literature about high-intensity interval training or HIIT training. Like if I get my heart rate up for short periods of time and I slow back down, and I go back up and I work really hard and I slow back down, I go back up. People are saying, is this good for people after stroke? So we know for healthy adults, whether they're young or older, that this high-intensity training will give you better fitness, and you actually, because you do these high-intensity bouts, you can get done in about 20 minutes. And so for people who don't have time to exercise, because that's an excuse I hear a lot, or a reason, I just don't have time to exercise, there's been some research into this to say, if I do this in these shorter bouts, is it better? For healthy adults, we can see that there is some benefit in doing this. Then the next step was, well, what about people that have heart disease, or maybe have had heart surgery? Is it good for them? Now you have to remember, these are supervised studies, but the answer was yes, we can improve their aerobic fitness by doing this high-intensity interval training, and we can do it in less time. So again, there is some benefit, but I would like to just remind everybody that this is supervised study. So then the question becomes, what about for people after stroke, which is a topic of interest here today, and can they do it? Can they adhere to that intensity protocol? And right now I have to say, I don't know. We don't know if it's beneficial for people after stroke. We just don't have the answers. The studies aren't there. But I'm happy to tell you that in the Kansas City area, that we do have a study ongoing that started in January of 2018, so we are recruiting and enrolling. A study where we're doing high-intensity interval training, and we're comparing it to what we do in the standard, again, what we wrote about in those guidelines, which is moderate continuous training. So this is which zone? This be blue, green, or red? The green zone. You guys are awesome. Everybody's paying attention. The moderate continuous training. So again, the green zone. We're looking at that. I'm working hard, but not really hard. So again, we're comparing this, and so this is a really great trial because we're also with the University of Delaware, the University of Cincinnati, and here in Kansas City at Katie Med Center, we're a part of this trial to really study it. So I just want to share with you what it is because some of you might be interested and you might want to reach out to our team. So again, we're doing HIIT, which is short duration of exercise followed by rest. We want to see whether this moderate or high intensity is the most beneficial for walking endurance. So we want to know, can you walk further after this? And is one of these two exercise intensities better than the other? The other one is, what's the minimum amount? So this is a 12-week study. And we look at 4 weeks, and then we do our assessments. We do 8 weeks and do our assessments, and then 12. So is 4 weeks okay? Do we get benefit? Do we get the most benefit after 8 weeks, or do we get the most after 12? So that's really what we're interested in. So this is what it looks like. So again, we do continuous training in this green zone. We are in the red zone here. We are looking at this high intensity interval training, and this is really driven by, because people after stroke sometimes have physical limitations that maybe they can't move their leg fast enough to get their heart rate up. So what we do is we look at your fastest walking speed that you can do over ground, and that's how we start by prescribing this exercise. And then we keep everything else the same between the groups. So we do overground walking for 10 minutes to start. We get you on the treadmill and in that harness, and we go for 20 minutes. And then we go back to the overground walking because we think that what you practice on the treadmill may be helpful to real-world walking. So we go back out into where we do our walking, which we keep everything the same as far as contact, again, the time, so that we can really ask this question about intensity. So this is what it looks like. If you're interested, we will do an initial screen over the phone. Then we'll bring you in consent and get your medical records and see if you meet all the criteria. If you meet everything, and we'll do a physical assessment, then we'll do an exercise test where we get your aerobic capacity. Remember, where we look at how well your heart, lungs, and, anybody remember? Muscles are working together. And then we'll randomize you in one of these two groups. And so you'll go through this 12-week session, and then we'll have you do post-testing. So again, we're trying to really get at what exercise intensity is the best. We do a 10-meter walk test for fast walking. We do a 6-minute walk for walking endurance, and this is our primary outcome measure. We also look at measures of health, of fatigue. We look at rate of change. We do an exercise test, as I talked about, and then we also put a stepwatch on your foot. And we want to see if you're taking more steps in the community while you're enrolled in this exercise program. But I also want to say, this is a unique opportunity for people to, be a part of something that's supervised, but what else can we do? So, there's opportunities for yoga. Again, if you can see that, this individual's not sitting all day long, but using, for people who use wheelchair, maybe yoga to do shoulder stretch, to stretch their legs, to bend their knees, for hamstrings. There's different things, and we can use weights in different capacities. Again, a long time ago, I was in a pretty bad car accident, and I started from ground zero, and I used soup cans. That's how weak I was. So again, anything you have that provides resistance, you can use. And even your own body weight, which is what this individual is doing right here. So for muscle strengthening, and again, and this is taking it from those exercise recommendations, we said, doing the major muscle groups, especially lower extremity strength, and when you exercise your diaphragm, this is all good for core. So what sometimes people don't know is that your leg strength is one of the most important things that we need to strengthen. Why is that? Why do we care about our legs? What do you think? Why are they important? walking, excellent. What else? But what do you do before you walk? You stand up, excellent, right? So to get up out of the chair, you have to have good leg strength and power before you even start walking. So strengthening our legs is very important. But also strengthening our arms is important, and why is that?
Blood circulation.
What's that?
Blood circulation.
Blood circulation is important. What else? What about thinking about function? What else would be important? Why do we care if our arms are strong? Push up out of the wheelchair. My favorite is giving my grandchildren hugs, right? You gotta have some strength to give hugs, right? Reaching for things, pulling cabinets open. All of this is very important to our daily activity. So we recommend 2 to 3 days per week. And we recommend that if you're gonna do formalized exercise with resistance, that you give yourselves a day off in between. So 2 to 3 times a week, but don't do it back to back. Don't do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Maybe do Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Give your muscles time to relax. And again, the recommendation is 3 sets, 10 to 15 reps. But if you can only do 2 sets of 8 reps, totally fine. Again, as long as you do it, that's really what's important. These are just guidelines and recommendations. And also to follow so that you don't overdo it, right? All of a sudden, don't start an exercise program and do 10 sets of 30 reps. That's not okay either, right? Because then you're going to be really, really sore. I do want to make sure that, we understand too that sometimes our muscles get tired or they're really sore the day after. That's normal. If you're in pain and you can't move your arms, you need to talk with either the trainer or you need to cut back or maybe talk to your physician. So again, there's going to be some soreness, but give yourself rest and it should go away in a day or 2. Again, if it doesn't and it gets worse, you need to talk to either the trainer or somebody that's working with you or a physician. Again, there's modifications to all exercise. I showed you that chair yoga. There's ways that you can modify it. You can do things from a wheelchair. You can do it from a seated chair. You can do it in standing. It doesn't all have to be at the gym on weight machines. And I think that's always such an important message, that you understand that there's always ways to modify it and it's still good for you, right? You got head nods, excellent. All right. So one of the things that we found when we looked at all the literature available for people after stroke, now this applies to everybody, but we were really interested in people after stroke. We found that benefits of exercise, it improves our mood. We typically feel better after we're done exercising. Our thinking abilities, and this is a very hot topic, especially for people after stroke, is can I think better? Can I use my mind better? Can I make decisions better? And we found that there is less available literature, but that's going to change here in the next 5-10 years, data coming out. But what literature was available, we found, yes, exercise does help our thinking abilities after stroke. It also helps with depression. And it's likely because you're moving, you're getting out. And again, I just think I've always thought this is such a great benefit of the Stroke Foundation. You have people around you. You can talk to them. You're engaging with people. And again, that makes us feel better. That's just kind of one of those natural things. And exercise is a big part of that. Again, we talked about giving grandkids or kids hugs. We've talked about getting things out of the cabinet, opening doors, lifting the ever-popular remote. Being able to, improve strength and upper extremity function, right? It's good. I'm not going to talk a lot about my prior work in vascular health. For those ladies who have been here, I've shown that exercise in people after stroke improves your blood vessels, your arteries, your veins, the things that carry blood throughout your whole body. There's a benefit to exercise for that. So we know that that's there. Our aerobic fitness, again, that test where we push you, we have you go as long and as hard as you can to test our heart. What else? Are we listening? Muscles. And lungs. Excellent. So again, that's our aerobic fitness. That improves with exercise. And then there have been multiple studies that have shown that general exercise improves your walking endurance. You can just move longer amounts of time when you do exercise. All right, so here's a message I'm so excited about, and that I've been saying for a long time. But now there's doctors that we call neurologists who are also saying, hey, what we do that's good for the heart is good for our brain. And that's an exciting time. Really, it really is. We're trying to look at that. And it has nothing to do with the heart is my favorite organ at all, right? It is my favorite. I'm going to be honest, it's my favorite. But that's great, because if our heart's working well, if it's pumping blood, it's going to help our brain, right? It's all connected. So I want to show you some really fun data that we have, and it's a lot of graphs, but I think it's fun information. Oh, there we are, hold on here. So what research is being done right here in the Kansas City area? What have we learned about exercise and brain health? All right, but when I was introduced by Janice, she talked about something that was very fun. I wanted to study brain and exercise, so she was right. My son and I, we walked across the whole state of Kansas, all 570 miles, started over here at the Colorado border, followed the Santa Fe Trail, which is something that people took when they were using, wagons to get across horse and wagons. But instead of going all the way here, we ended up at KU, which is our home. And we wanted to be crossing state line at the medical center. So we did that, and some of you remember that journey, and some of you might remember, along with that walk, we got blisters, which was awful. We walked through rain. It was quite the journey. But one of the most fun things was, some of you were probably in the audience here, that some people from the Stroke Foundation met me for lunch, which was fun. Met me for lunch, and we celebrated my return. And then more of you came at state line and met me as my son and I crossed the finish line. And what fun that was, right? But there was a reason for this. Did I do it for my health? I don't think so. I do like to hike, but this is what this fundraiser, all of you who came and met me, who advocated, who promoted our walk, helped us raise money. We raised over $50,000. And we got all of this equipment right here. This is a device it's an ultrasound. It's the same thing we use on mom's belly if she's pregnant to look at the baby, but it measures brain blood flow. It can tell us how much brain blood flow is going through a specific artery. We monitor your heart rate. Again, a way to monitor intensity. This is a very specialized blood pressure machine that goes on the finger, which allows us to measure your blood pressure with each heartbeat. So not only do we get your heartbeat, we get the blood flow and the blood pressure with each heartbeat. And that is something that other people have done. That's not necessarily novel, but we wanted to do it. We're the first in the Kansas City area to be able to do all this and to study. So this is our setup. This is what we call our Walk Across Kansas corner. But what we were the first in the world to do was what I'm going to show you right here. We modeled this. So what I want to right here is the brain blood flow velocity. So here's low, and this is the highest point. We decided to characterize continuously what your blood flow looks like at rest to exercise. So here's the blood flow velocity that we can get at rest, and we get an average, and it gives us a number. Right here at this dotted line, this is exercise onset. So this is the part when people start pushing on our recumbent stepper. We take a lot of different measures, but just the easiest that I'm going to share with you today is like this period right here, where you get up and you exercise. So this is how your blood flow is changing. And we can get a measure right here for what that number is, okay? So this is an active, young, healthy individual. And so we look at how this person's blood flow has changed from rest to exercise. This is a sedentary older adult. So this is somebody who doesn't exercise. And so again, you can see how this blood flow doesn't really go up a lot. And it's probably because they don't train and their system's not used to the exercise. Then last is, this is somebody who's had a stroke in the exact vessel that we're measuring, which is the middle cerebral artery. So you can see that this response has been very much affected by the stroke. And I just want to say, like, this person is matched, sex matched, so they were both male, and they were similar ages. So again, you can see how stroke can affect the brain blood flow. So we're the first to publish this. We also looked at older adults, and so this is, again, we had fit. So I want to highlight here was just one individual. Each person in here, it's only one. Here we have 15 young, healthy people. So again, we see this nice increase in blood flow. And in the older adults, again, these are sedentary adults, it's much more blunted. Now, one of the things we wanted to do, I was curious, so I brought in older adults who exercised very regularly, and their blood flow was right in the middle. So again, this tells us that activity and exercise is very important. So we get the same thing, so we'll go through this. But the most important message that I want to leave you with and have you think about is that, again, let me see if I put all my yes. So right here is rest. This is in 67 people. It's anybody that came into our lab who's anywhere between 18 and 80 years of age. Okay, so there's 67 people here. So here's rest. We've measured the brain blood flow response at low intensity exercise. So I'm going to step away because I want to make sure everybody can see. So here is low intensity exercise. This is the open circles right here. And here's moderate intensity. So again, here's this blue zone and here's the green zone. Your blood flow doing low intensity, is it greater or the same as it is at rest? Does it go up? Does it change? Yes, absolutely it does. And the exercise that we're prescribing low intensity is no different than going for a casual walk. So if I walked across this room and went back and forth in just a comfortable pace, that's the intensity that we measured this. So if I leave you with anything besides the quiz that I'm going to give you that you're supposed to answer, reduce our, what time? Sitting time, sedentary time. Is that even just low intensity exercise, moving around, will increase your blood flow from just sitting here. So that is a good message that I love being able to tell people. You don't have to get to the green zone just to improve your blood flow, okay? But moderate intensity increases it even more. And we just finished another study where we looked at a third intensity. It's not the red zone, but it's higher in the green zone. And again, it goes up a little bit further so that we know that doing exercise is good for our overall brain health. And there might be a quiz on this as well, so just be ready. All right, so what about after stroke? What do we know about people following stroke? So we just published this paper in the Journal of Neurologic Physical Therapy. So we have 15 people after stroke and 18 older adults. We matched them for their age and also for gender. So we had the same, very similar number of males as we had females in each group. And the age was almost identical. But what we see, and again, we're recruiting people in this group that have had a stroke in the same artery that we're measuring, okay? So we can see that the blood flow is less in the stroke-affected side. Now, I don't have it on this graph, but the non-stroke affected blood vessel actually is like right in the middle of right here. So there might be something that happens the time that you have the stroke to the 3 months where that blood flow declines, okay? So our next steps are going to have to be to look at exercise or how do we improve that. Janice, can you give me time? I just want to make sure I'm not.
11:46.
Okay, so I want to finish up here rather quickly. So, again, this isn't to say, oh my gosh, this is all bad. We're just starting to understand it. And this is going to help us figure out things that we can do to help restore blood flow or to prescribe exercise. Or do we need to give different medications? What other therapeutic interventions? What do we need to do in physical therapy that might help you? Is it exercise? Is it movement? We don't know. So I don't want anyone to walk away and think, oh no, we don't know yet. We are the first in the world to characterize this in people after stroke in this way. That doesn't mean people haven't looked at blood flow in other ways, but looking at it in this way is very interesting. So this was interesting. In our data set, in this stroke data where I just showed you right here, okay, we averaged everybody's response all together. But we found somebody who was really active before their stroke. They rode their bike, they walked a lot, and they went for a run. And they started their exercise. I don't know if it was here or on their own, but they started to exercise. So what I want to show you is that, oops, there we go. I went too fast. This is somebody who was active before their stroke and started becoming more active after their stroke. Look at the difference. Their blood flow at rest is higher and their response is higher. This was somebody who was a little bit older but did not do any exercise before or after their stroke. You can see the difference in their blood flow. They had a stroke in the same vessel because it was all the middle cerebral artery. It was starting to go up a little bit, but it didn't really increase as much. Now, it didn't drop below, right? It went up above baseline, but it didn't go up as high as what we had thought. And so again, I think this just reinforces the idea that, again, we need to be exercising, we need to be moving and decrease our sedentary time. Also, as we were collecting data, we had one person that came in, and unfortunately, they had a second stroke. And we just happened to be at the hospital over in the health system recruiting, and this person had a second stroke. And we asked this person, would you be interested in coming back and having us look at your blood flow again? Because this was a really unique opportunity, to be able to do that. So in May of 2017, this person had a left middle cerebral artery stroke. They came in 3 months later, and then we do it at 3 and 6 months. We just finished the study, and so we have data at 3 months after stroke and 6 months. This person in 2018 actually had a right middle cerebral artery stroke, so it was on the other side. And so we brought him back in July and then in October. And then we did all of our typical stuff that I showed you before. So, hot off the presses today, it's actually now published in the literature. And everybody who knows me knows I've been tweeting about it, because apparently Jane knows that I'm on Twitter a lot. So we were tweeting and we will be Facebooking soon. But it just came out today. So here's the data. So here's his first visit. He came to us. So remember, he had his left stroke first. So again, here's his baseline data. It's a little bit lower than the non-stroke affected side. And just so everybody can see, I'm going to step out of the camera here. And you can see, now he had a really great response. This is a real good response. But he was a big exerciser before, and he was biking before he came in. So another example of somebody where exercise might be protective in people that have, a stroke, and it's protective for all of us. His stroke-affected side is still really good. Look how it goes up. This is a nice response, and we were really happy with it. We brought him back at 6 months after stroke, and it was cold because it was November. So he's exercising a little bit less, but he still has a good response. After his second stroke, look at the change. He actually changed, and he was doing no activity. And his stroke was very similar to his first one, but he just didn't feel like he could exercise. He didn't have, he just didn't want to get out. He mostly sat and played with the dog. He told us he watched TV. He didn't move a whole lot. And then 6 months after his second stroke, when we brought him back in, again, both of the vessels respond the same way. So this is really fascinating. A great case report. And so really the next questions will be, what do I do? So again, when we think about this slide, what is the most important message that I said here? Here's quiz time. We're on Facebook Live, so you guys got to answer. Don't leave me hanging up here. What was the message here? Do you remember?
Keep exercising.
Keep exercising. Is low intensity better than rest? You guys got it? Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Head nods don't show up on Facebook Live. We need sound. Yes, so low intensity is better than baseline. Which gets me to my last point. That what? we have to do what? What is the one thing I said I was going to quiz you about? We need to reduce sedentary time. Excellent. Very good. Yes. So again, I just want to leave you with exercise is something that we need to do. It's good for our brain. We don't know if it's good for cognition. We collected cognition data on this big data set, so we're hoping maybe next year to get this information published. So, happy to go through that. So in summary, exercise is great for the heart, lungs, and brain after stroke. I like to say that it's powerful medication because I want people to think about when they do exercise. It really does. It's beneficial for everything. So I have a colleague who always says, if you have a heart, you should exercise. If you don't have a heart, maybe not. So, exercise is good for all of us. And again, even in small doses, right? It can be in small doses. 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Just standing up, sitting back down, anything that we can do to move, because it's very helpful for our brain health, our risk factors, and everything. So I have to give a thank you, because while I'm here talking, I have a team that works very, very hard. They're in the lab doing testing, and so all of my team members in the REACH lab, I thank so very much because they do such great work. The KU Health System, the stroke team, they're the reason we get a lot of these patients. They help us, they let us know when people have had stroke. We work with in the huddle with the stroke team. Our KU Alzheimer's Disease Center, again, is very exercise-focused lifestyle intervention and how that improves brain health. And I've had funding from the NIH, the American Heart Association. People have donated to the lab, again, walk across Kansas, and I've had other foundation dollars. So I'd like to take the time to open it up for questions. You're welcome to stand and ask me questions. But I will take questions if there are some in this last remaining moments. But most of all, thank you. And thank you for inviting me and everything that the Stroke Foundation does. And how did I know that you were going to ask the first question, Joe?
I have a comment, not a question.
Okay.
When people say they don't have time for something, what they're really saying is that's not important. Because people always find time for the important things. So when they say I don't have time to exercise, my response will always be, you mean it's not important to you?
So for the viewers who are on the line, we had somebody comment that, and it makes an excellent point, that when people say they don't have time, that maybe it's not a priority and it's not important to them. And I think that's true. That it might not be at the top priority because we do make the things that are important. Now that's not everybody. Sometimes there's things that maybe we're limited by movement, or maybe in some cases some people don't have time. But absolutely, I think that sometimes it may not be important to some people and they choose not to exercise. Or maybe they don't understand the benefits. I think there's a lot to that we have to think about. Sometimes with people with disabilities, they may not be able to get to a place to exercise, especially if they're relying on transportation or don't have any. There's a lot of things that we have to think about, but yeah, I appreciate that. In the back?
Yeah, how does the effect of arthritis and more active arthritis affect this? Like I'm just noticing as the cold weather comes in, there's certain days I can't do things.
So the question was about what about with arthritis or people who have very active arthritis, and when it gets colder, especially in Kansas, we have those extremes. How do I exercise and things like that? And the answer would be, you might notice the arthritis more, and it might feel like you don't want to exercise because it hurts. My recommendation would be maybe to drop the intensity a little bit, but do more movement and more physical activity and keep that up. The recommendations for arthritis are, because there's, as physical therapists, there's a lot of interest in pain and things like that. And what I've read with arthritis is that, and actually in that big meta-analysis, they found exercise is beneficial for everything. It actually helps reduce arthritis symptoms. So when you want to quit is when you need to maintain. Again, if you notice that soreness, I would just decrease that intensity or do shorter bouts throughout the day so that you're still getting that exercise in. Yeah. What else can I answer?
Well, I'm convinced that exercise will help blood flow and increase the heart and improve the brain function. at least the flow of brain, but I didn't see any data about the blood flow exercise related to total recovery from a stroke. Do you have any data related to recovery?
So the first comment was, which I'm just thrilled that somebody actually bought into the exercise is good for the heart and brain. Yeah, it's got in. All right. I've got somebody who will help me to reinforce my message. He says that there's no doubt to him that it helps the heart and it helps the brain. But what about overall stroke recovery? I don't have an answer for you yet. I think more studies related to exercise and recovery. What I can tell you and what I do know, and what I feel very confident in saying, is that if you're doing exercise, it can help your walking endurance, and it can help your overall fitness. And what I tell people is if you have more endurance, and you have more ability to do activities, even though you still might have your disability, maybe it's a hemiparetic leg or a hemiparetic arm, you have more endurance to do other activities. Now, is that recovery? And some people would say, no, that's not how we define recovery. But you're doing more activities, and so is that a part of your recovery? I would say yes. Does it make every symptoms go away? Does it fix, a weak arm or an inability to use an arm or a leg? The answer, I would say, at this time is no. We need to understand how to the area where the cells have died after a stroke. How do we either reconnect the ones that are available? How do we, fix that area? And we just don't have those answers yet. We haven't outsmarted our own brains, but we're working on it. We're trying. We're trying to figure out ways to do it. There are a lot of people in Australia, Canada, and even in the United States who are really focused on trying to find ways in which we can help recovery, whether it's through movement, repetitions, a lot of practice, things like that. But we just don't have an answer yet related to exercise and full body stroke recovery that you asked about. But hopefully we'll get there. That's what research is so important for. Yeah.
Coming from a place of not being able to walk, to having therapy and being able to walk, to me that was recovery.
Yes. So I think he was asking, so the comment was is that I couldn't walk, I went to physical therapy, and now I can't walk, and that's recovery. Absolutely. His question was more about general exercise. So that specific occupational therapy, speech therapy, intensive rehabilitation, physical therapy, your what we call gait training or walking, teaching you how to get your balance, doing those activities, absolutely, that's part of recovery. And that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about after you've left the hospital and you're exercising. But you make a great point. I feel like everything's part of that recovery process. And also I want to say that, we really don't know when recovery stops. And I don't think it ever stops. And that's why we always want to encourage people to be active, to keep practicing walking, to keep doing things. I wanted to share a video, but I'm working with the health system. We had one individual who came in a wheelchair to our study, and he left walking. He could walk around Cabela's, where he used to need a wheelchair. He also returned to his part of his job part-time. So again, these are all very positive things that are part of stroke recovery that can be beneficial with exercise.
That's how the Stroke Foundation got started, is they tell you you plateaued, and Joey Rose didn't believe in that.
I remember when she first had her operation further south on Lamar. I was there when the Stroke Foundation way back then. And you're right, she did. She was a big advocate for recovery doesn't stop and that plateau.
They tell you you plateaued and they kind of kick you out.
I understand. That's absolutely true. So actually on Twitter this morning, the American Congress of Rehab Medicine has a conference going on. And somebody tweeted out a slide from the conference that said, we have to keep telling our patients that recovery stops. So I retweeted it and said, it's a very important message, and yes, that is something that we should not tell people. Again, when I had my car accident, I was in recovery for 2 years, and they told me, you'll never exercise again, you'll never do this again. And I said, yeah, watch me. And here I am today. So yeah, it doesn't feel very good. Being a patient, it didn't feel very good to have that message. So I always encourage you know,
I was told
people to
I'd
say
never
that.
walk or talk again.
Huh?
I was told I'd never walk or
So you're
talk
told you
again.
never walk or talk again, and here we are holding a conversation.
My kids were probably okay with it.
So the comment was her kids were okay with her not talking again, but I'm very glad that you are. So again, you know, recovery doesn't stop. Don't stop believing. It is hard work. You have to keep practicing and doing those things, and it is hard and it takes time. But I have a feeling we're out of time, and that I need to wind this down before I get in trouble. So I really want to thank you, everybody that's joined through Facebook Live. I'll stick around if there's some additional questions, but we're done officially for today, so thank you very much.